Hi, my name is Jenny Lauren Dowden for Conduit News, and today we have former State Senator Bryan King joining us today in the studio. He is here to talk about redistricting, the maps, and how outside influences can potentially influence that. Thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thanks for having me.
So, of course, there's a lot happening with the maps and how the lines are being drawn. A lot of discussion about it. It's been in the news. First, just give me your overall impression on what you're seeing.
Yeah, it's just typical, politics and how districts and lines are drawn. And this started, people don't understand gerrymandering, and the term come from Eldridge Gerry, who was a founding father, who was even a vice president at one time. But while he was governor of Massachusetts, he districted some lines to try and manipulate things to make, the outcome of the election come out his way, and shift it a different way than what basically drawing the lines fairly and letting the will of the people decide. So that's where the term gerrymandering comes in. But I prefer to use gerrymandering from my experience and being involved in watching Arkansas politics over the years and the nation. Gerrymandering just basically is trying to rig an election.
You are familiar with that, as we've talked about during your time at the state capitol. Something very similar happened in 2011. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, in 2011, the lines were drawn again, and Arkansas system is one of the worst systems in the nation as far as drawing lines. You have politicians drawing the lines, which really shouldn't happen. But you have the legislature that draws the congressional lines. Then you have the governor, attorney general, and the secretary of state that will draw the legislative lines. And so when you do that, it just turned into, it was really one of the most pathetic things I've ever seen in politics behind the scenes, because you would have legislator after legislator just selling their legislative soul to get a district drawn for them. I mean, they were all worried about what would happen, trying to get a district drawn from them. You had the other side of, they were trying to get people beat. They were trying, instead of just drawing the lines fairly and let the people decide, it was just basically, as I keep saying, it's nothing more than rig an election.
So fast forward to where we are today. The issue of the maps has been prominent for several months. It was lingering as we went to the session. Is it a possibility, or tell me what your thoughts are? Could those maps and how the lines would be drawn, could that have played into how legislators voted, what bills they proposed or didn't propose? What's going on? Talk to us about what's going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, that happens. I mean, you would have a bill come up, and you would think that that somebody should vote this way and they should follow what they said, no matter what, even on Democrat or Republican side. But then the next thing you know, they would just start melting. And it was like I said, it was going back to trying to beg the governor to draw a district they wanted. You had lobbyists and special interest involved, with their interest making their voices be known. And, at the time you had Governor Beebe and Attorney General Dusty McDaniel, and you had Secretary of State Mark Martin. And Secretary of State Mark Martin was always criticized by the Democrats. He's always seen as the media as this, fringe guy. But everybody behind the scenes would say that, and if you look at the maps he proposed, they tried to follow county lines, they tried to follow communities of interest, and was more respectful. And then if you look at what Governor Beebe did, he just basically cowardly, tried to manipulate and rig elections. There's no question about it. So you had the special interest involved, and so it just turned into more about this inside the bubble decisions, more than it was about being fair and respecting the will of the people and trying to represent the people, the true interest of the people. And it's just trying to manipulate things.
It's amazing to me that it's not surprising, but for some people, they may not realize the reach and the influence that special interests and lobbyists have when it comes to the issue of redistricting. Why do they even have a say and a play in that in the first place?
Well, they shouldn't. It should be illegal in the first place. I mean, the thing of hiring lobbyists to help you draw maps. I mean, I go back enough in years to know whenever you didn't have the technology today to draw lines, and it was a little bit more cumbersome and harder to do. But yet today you can go down to an 8th grade civics class with the technology and be able to draw a map. And I guarantee you those kids are going to come out with a better, pure outcome than lobbyists and politicians trying to look out for their own interest. I mean, right now, the thing of like lobbyists being paid by tax dollars to help draw lines, I mean, it really should be illegal.
Let's talk about Pulaski County for a second. That how they were drawing up the lines that made news. Give me your impression on what they proposed with Pulaski.
Yeah, I mean, it's just basically, trying to fork Pulaski County. That's just that's the best term I can use to get it to describe it. And what is funny right now, not funny, I guess, is like in 2011, after going through in or 2013 session, after what I saw in 2011 session, I proposed a constitutional amendment to, come up with a different way than this god awful way that we have now drawing the lines. And I told the Democrats at the time, and the margins between the Democrats and Republicans was very thin at that time, even though Republicans were in the majority. And I told the Democrats at the time, I said, you know what, you guys are going to regret this one day. And if you don't get behind this and support it, because I felt like I had a really good chance of getting it on the ballot. And I really felt like you get it before the people that it was going to pass. And I told the Democrats at the time, I said, you guys are going to regret that one of these days. And sure enough, I've had Democrats now call me and say, we regret that. And a lot of them that's doing the complaining right now were the ones that were trying to get their districts drawn for them. Democrats at that time, were actually cheering Governor Beebe on to try to manipulate the lines and do that. And so now, 10 years later, it's now they're complaining about it.
Talk just very briefly about why the lines are so important when you're looking at it from a voter perspective. Why is it important to hold on to those true lines, whether if you are in, say, I'm from the Delta, holding on to those lines to protect, the farming industry or whatever. Like, why are the lines so important, and why do voters need to pay attention?
Because it is like so many things in politics is like, let's say a big cruise ship or aircraft carrier. You have a rudder in the back of it. The rudder in the size of, in relation to the ship is very small, but it's one of those things that will pivot things behind the scenes that has a huge impact. And that's what happens. And so whether it's Pulaski County, whether it's the small town of Alpena, which has, 2 state senators and I think 3 state reps. I mean, and they split all that up to try and manipulate and try and rig elections. And, it just made them not have a voice. And that's not what democracy is about. People should have a voice, and districts should be drawn as much as possible. Now, if you wanted to, and you can, I mean, I did a bill as one year, so you can change the county boundaries. If you want to do that, that's a more straightforward way of doing something rather than trying to fork up something and carve it up and manipulate and dilute it down and basically try and rig an election and minimize a certain group's voice.
What do you hope to see come forward out of these maps?
I hope that there was an independent, or, I say independent in politics, it's like it can be termed independent, but I'm a farmer. Wait till it's done before you say it's really independent, because you can have these independent commissions that are appointed by somebody that's just a stool pigeon or a puppet for the interest anyway. But yeah, I think that there has to be something done differently to redraw the lines and make sure there has to be transparency. I mean, right now, the fact that the Board of Apportionment, whether it's Democrat or Republican or anybody, or Bryan King, that can go in executive session, all this behind the scenes stuff on things should all be public notice. So any politician at all, begging for his district, making his voice be known, whatever it is, it should be public record, period. I mean, this thing so it needs to have not just 100% transparency, but 500% transparency.
Well, anything else that we didn't cover that you'd like to mention?
It's just a little bit of watching this over the years and knowing that, hey, I gave you guys all the ones complaining, which some of them that are complaining, I won't say, were the ones that didn't want to support it. I mean, in supporting that in 2013 would have said what was done in 2011 really should have been illegal. I mean, it really should. We talk about voter fraud, and everybody that knows me, I've been one that's rooted out voter fraud, exposed voter fraud, took on things. And when the Democrats kept telling me for years here in Arkansas that I was crazy and there was no voter fraud, well, you know what? I found it and took it on. and exposed it. And this is another one of those issues that you just keep telling these people, you should have got behind that at the time. And like I said, some of them that are out there publicly saying this against this were the ones that didn't do it and stand up. So, it's about having a standard. And it is, if you don't have a standard of fairness and making sure that people's representation is fair and just, well, then it doesn't start the process off right.
Right.
And if you don't start it off right, it just never gets back to being the way it should be. I'm not talking about an issue that you agree with or I agree with. I'm just talking about the actual process.
Yeah, that's great insight. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today in the studio, and we hope to have you back on again soon to talk about this.
All right, thank you.